What's up, everyone? Just a quick video today just to give you an update on my sort of 2-year mark on Finasteride. Most of you would know who follow the channel for the hair loss content that I have been on 0.5 milligrams daily of generic Finasteride. If you don't have to really worry about generic versus Propecia if you're in a developed country with relatively stringent laws around generics, and the cost delta there is just pretty obvious that you're not going to waste your time with Propecia. Now, just sort of dialing back to when I first started noticing an acceleration in my hair loss. I'd recently moved into an apartment and started noticing hair pretty much everywhere. It was a bit concerning to me because it wasn't something that I noticed previously. It was definitely what I would call a step change in the rate of shedding, and there wasn't any particular event or stressor in my life that could have perhaps chalked this up to telogen effluvium, which is a much more acute style of hair loss where it's not directly linked to the progression of male pattern baldness in the sense of your hair follicles miniaturizing. I probably monitored this for about 6 months and researched the drugs, the relevant drugs being finasteride and dutasteride quite heavily. I didn't really want to go down the path of using minoxidil just because in and of itself, there was a lot of research to suggest that once you discontinue usage, that there's going to be a pretty rapid shed, and that wasn't something that I was willing to have to commit to on a long-term basis. Whereas finasteride, there is a lot of research to suggest that it effectively acts as a pause button on hair loss. So you will eventually, if you discontinue the drug, reach those sort of hair loss rates that you were experiencing previously, but you can stave off hair loss and indeed reverse in some cases. But I'm just going to give you my sort of experience over the last 18, 24 months, just from the top. So let's just dive straight into it. Now, I think the main thing to clarify here is that finasteride is not in and of itself a miracle drug. I have not noticed significant regrowth, and that could be due to the fact that I never had particularly aggressive hair loss in the first place. I'm in my late 20s. I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm not, particularly out of shape or anything like that, although I could obviously be a bit more shredded. I think we all could. But there wasn't any sort of deficiency in my diet or anything like that that could have really explained why I was starting to see, 50 to 100 hairs in the shower on a daily basis. And that was something that was really concerning to me because, as I mentioned before, it was definitely a step change in the rate of hair loss. So I talked to one GP just at a general health clinic, and I went down, and which was a bad start was he was bald himself, which didn't, in hindsight, didn't bode well at all, because while he was a male doctor, he really had no concept of what the different treatment options were, and he actually asked me to spell out finasteride to him when he was Googling this drug, and he looked at it and he said, "This is for benign prostatic hyperplasia," and I was just sitting there just dumbfounded that a GP had no idea about this. Like, it's been around for probably 20, 25 years now, and it's on label for the treatment of male pattern baldness. And he just sort of scoffed at me and just said, you're not losing your hair, you're being paranoid, and you probably just looking to Regain or Rogaine, which is obviously the branded version of minoxidil. And I was just sitting there just like, I can't believe this guy has no idea about hair loss at all. But, step back from it, he is a general practitioner. There isn't that. He's sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, not to be insulting towards a GP, obviously, but I knew then and there that I had to go to someone with a bit more experience. So I just went to my local family doctor, and which was a bit more of a wait to get to, but he really had all his bases covered, and luckily he was actually on the board in New South Wales, Australia, of the initially approved the usage of finasteride for the treatment of hair loss. So he was very well versed in it and had a very good grasp of the actual side effect profile beyond sort of the hysteria that you often see on Reddit or the internet about how it's going to make you impotent and unable to function sexually, which seems to be the main concern that people have, and brain fog and all those types of things. So he knew the statistical likelihood of developing side effects, and he said, there's nothing to worry about. It's just a pill, right? There is a 1 to 2% chance, there's a very low chance that you will get adverse side effects, but beyond, there's sort of a nocebo effect where you've put it in your own head that you're gonna have these side effects. That's there's a very low likelihood, and the vast majority of men just take it and move on with their life and don't post about it, about how it's ruined their lives on the internet. So I got onto the drug, and I was naturally still, despite the fact I'd done my research, when you sort of start a treatment like this, and you're in the long haul for it, that you more or less don't want to put in your own head, right? So I sort of started on 0.5 milligrams daily. So all I did was buy, go down to your local chemist and get a pill cutter, and then I just effectively halved a 1 milligram finasteride tablet and just took that daily. The reason for doing that, as opposed to 1 milligram, perhaps say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, was just I knew that I would skip a day and forget a day, and I just wanted to eliminate that. I just wanted to build it into my routine that I was going to take 0.5 milligrams daily, the way I take my multivitamin, the way I take creatine, the way I take all these different supplements, just to minimize the potential for me to slip on the dosage. Because although, as we know, finasteride has diminishing returns once you get past 1 milligram, I didn't want to risk going much lower than that, because a lot of the clinical efficacy and data that supports this was around that 1 milligram mark. So I didn't want to be getting into territory where I was, missing a day here, missing a day there, and then you get to Monday or Friday, and then you've effectively given yourself an effective dose of, say, 0.2 or 0.3 milligrams. I just didn't want that to happen, so that's what I committed to in terms of the dosage there. And I think the main takeaways is that I've noticed is a massive reduction in the general shedding on my head. Pretty much, to put it bluntly, is I'd previously had noticed probably 50 to 100 hairs in the shower, and I'd literally be counting them. Like, I'd be going through, picking them out of the shower drain and putting them down, coming back a bit later and counting them out, and that's something that just probably died off after 2 months. I never had an aggressive shed, which you often hear about with finasteride, but I think part of that is also that I just never had really super aggressive hair loss. Like, I'm probably 28 and I'm pretty much a Norwood 1. I'm probably a bit high, have a higher hairline on my right side. This camera might be flipped, but effectively that's the area that I was perhaps a bit concerned about, like just that general sort of horseshoe pattern and then the crown, but there's nothing going on there that was particularly concerning for me. Like, a lot of people thought I was probably a bit paranoid about it, but it's just such a weight off my mind that I just don't take this pill and don't worry about hair loss anymore and don't think about it. Now, in terms of your own dosage and going about it, you definitely need to talk to a healthcare practitioner that, like I did, that was very well versed in it and had their ducks in a row, that didn't recommend minoxidil off the bat, because that's just not the first line of defense. The first line of defense is a 5-AR inhibitor, be it finasteride or dutasteride. But I would recommend, especially if you're starting out in this type of stuff, that finasteride is there's far less potential for side effects and issues down the line, just due to the lower half-life, in terms of clears your system much quicker, and you can get to standard 5-AR enzymatic activity and production and effectively resumption of hair loss much quicker if you are experiencing adverse side effects. Because I've been lucky, I haven't been in the 1 to 2% that experience that, but it definitely is something that's real, and particularly for men who are on the borderline in terms of being hypergonadal and having those issues, it's definitely something that they should consider carefully. But also look to lifestyle factors such as your diet, your sleep. I find sleep is a massive contributor to low motivation, low libido, low morale, low will to do pretty much anything. If I've got less than probably 6-7 hours of sleep, I'm pretty much half a zombie the next day, which is definitely not where you want to be. And I can certainly see how people who start taking finasteride and 2 weeks later have a really bad night of sleep and they can't function sexually, they would attribute that to the finasteride, when it's actually the fact that their lifestyle's crap. That's the thing that you really want to avoid and be aware of, is how those things contribute, especially as you get older. Once I'm not 21 anymore. I'm late 20s, and as you keep progressing, it's just something to be aware of. But in terms of finasteride being a miracle drug, I would definitely caution people that you need to get on this drug as soon as possible if you're serious about reversing hair loss. If you're a Norwood 3, 4, 5, and you're thinking about can finasteride save this, it's you really should have been thinking about it. Not to blame anyone for your own situation, but you really should try to get on top of it as soon as possible, because in my experience, like, I have a pretty high hairline, and apologies, I have a pretty dodgy camera because I've got fuck all subscribers, but it's something that I have definitely noticed that it has not repopulated this area at all, like a dead zone, if you will. It's definitely stopped my general hair shedding, but it hasn't fixed up that area at all, and I'm fine with that. That's my hairline's fine enough. I'm not too worried about that. And if it progresses, more down the line, like, I'll just continue treatment on 0.5 and maybe plug it up later or something like that. But it's not a miracle drug. And if you're not willing to commit to a three-pronged approach with microneedling, minoxidil and finasteride or dutasteride or whatever it might be, then that is something that you really need to consider, is that you need to get on this drug as soon as possible, because the reality of the situation is, if you're a male, if you have testosterone converting to dihydrotestosterone, and you have what you think is a mature hairline, you're probably barking up the wrong tree, and you're probably going to experience hair loss. And you can look to other factors such as genetics and your family and all those types of things. But the reality of the situation is that 99% of men are going to experience hair loss. A lot are going to experience hair loss at different rates as well. So some men will bald faster than others. But if you want to, have a decent mop on your head or a decent salad on your head in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and that's something that you care about, then definitely look into it with a GP, because it's right as of right now, it's the gold standard in terms of fighting hair loss. And I think it goes without saying, there's a lot more people out there who are experiencing very favorable results from treatments that just don't have the time, energy, or just don't want to post about it online. It just doesn't exist. You're going to inherently find a lot more negativity online, and people who have had poor experiences because they want to warn people away from it, which is fine. But the reality of the situation is, and why I'm trying to put a little bit of information out there, is that I've experienced no side effects at all, except my hair loss has stopped. And that's not to say that won't be the case for everyone, but that's just the reality of my situation. And if that gives anyone a bit of confidence to be able to go out and start treatment, and if it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, then there are other options that, but you just might have to be a bit more aggressive about it. And then at the end of the day, like, it's just hair. But if it's important to you, then try and I would encourage you to do something about it, because there's a lot of people out there who get upset about this stuff, have low self-esteem, which is directly linked to the fact that they're balding when they're 21, and it's, at the end of the day, it's the only real cosmetic thing that men can play around with. Most men, at least I assume, don't use makeup and don't have those sorts of things. And if they like getting a fade or whatever it might be, an $8 fade, by the way, then, and want to keep a hold of their hair, then as of right now, as of 2022, that I don't know why I checked the calendar for that. I should know it's 2022. But if that's something that matters to you, then look into it. That's all for me. Sorry for the disjointed ramble and rant. But I hope that gave people a little bit more context. That I guess the key takeaways are if you, and it's been repeated ad nauseum, not just by me but by everyone out there, that if you are experiencing hair loss, you have to get out in front of it. It's treatment as soon as possible, because if you can press pause on a reasonably decent hairline, and rather than letting it deteriorate, then that's a far more desirable situation than things going to crap much later on, and then you're fighting an uphill battle in terms of finasteride alone may or may not be able to save you or restore your hairline. You might need a hair transplant, and that's far more costly. And if you want some more detailed deep dives on the pharmacology and the cost benefit of all this type of stuff, and how the hormones play into it, then just search my channel. I've got a whole bunch of content around that, and more corporate finance content to come as well. So thanks for the rant. Apologies for the rant, rather, but hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a good day, and stay safe. Bye.